I very much have a fake job. So I'm a freelance sex educator. That's not a real job. For me, that means that I create content, I write for different publications, I do public speaking, talking to all different age groups about sex and sexuality, be it adults who just feel like they didn't get enough in school,
most of us didn't,
or youth who I work with through my nonprofit. Today, I want to talk about the craziest things that I've experienced in my history of studying sex and teaching about sex. Starting with things that I've had to see or watch. So I got my undergraduate degree in gender and sexuality studies, but since I knew that I wanted to talk about sex for a living, I ended up taking all of the sex and sexuality related electives, including like an evolutionary psychology of sex class. It was actually such a cool class, and the teacher was one of like the top sex researchers in the country. Does this look too light? One of our assignments though, actually a couple of our assignments really like stuck with me and like low-key scarred me for life. The first being that we had to watch a recorded labiaplasty. That's when you get the lengths of your inner labia shortened because you feel like they're too long. I get that for some people it might be a comfort thing, but a lot of people it's like, I don't think my vulva looks normal. And keep in mind, the vast majority of vulvas are outies. So what is this normal we're talking about? That aside, what I did not know about labiaplasties before watching this video is that most people are awake during their labiaplasty. So I'm watching it being scarred, and so is Shorty getting the labiaplasty. Yeah, if I was hesitant to accept the natural beauty of my labia before, that definitely did it, because I could never in my life
be awake while they just snip, snip, snip.
And I will also say, as like a preface to the rest of this video, that being a sex educator is largely about not yucking anyone's yum. From questions that I get in my DMs to things that I've seen intentionally or through courses I take or just out living life as a sex educator, I feel like there's not much that can shock me. Like, I want everyone to feel like talking to me is a safe space, because it really is. None of the crazy story times are really gonna have to do with any kink shaming or me being judgmental at all, because that's just not my vibe. That being said, I've seen some stuff.
Things that were just objectively jarring.
So in that same class, we had a unit on paraphilias, which I would define as just anything you'd categorize as like problematic sexuality, which of course historically, like what we deem problematic has been just a flawed system of judgment, right? Like queerness or kink. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about pedophilia, zoophilia, the act of having sex with animals being called bestiality, but the attraction to animals being called zoophilia. Similarly, I know way too much about the terminology around pedophile. Pedophile actually refers to like a certain age group that you're attracted to, and then there's phebophiles and ephebophiles.
My girlfriend was like, oh no, we cannot listen to R. Kelly. R. Kelly is a pedophile. And now here's the thing, and just hear me out for 1 second. Technically speaking, R. Kelly is not a pedophile. Just give me 1 second. I promise this goes well. Just hear me out. The term pedophile refers to people who are attracted to those that are prepubescent. Then there's something called a hebophile. That's people who are attracted to those in the early stages of puberty, like 11, 12, 13, 14. And then there's something called an ephebophile. That's people who are attracted to those in the later stages of puberty, like 15, 16, 17, 18. But I think the reason we don't make those distinctions is because it's very hard to explain the difference without sounding like a pedophile.
That being said, in that unit, we did have to read firsthand accounts from both a person who was sexually attracted to minors and a person who was having a sexual relationship with a horse. That second one being particularly, upsetting. I mean, both were upsetting. That second one particularly stuck with me, largely because it did kind of make you think about the way that we treat animals in general. Like, I think most of us are just inherently kind of disturbed by the idea of having sex with an animal. And yeah, okay, that's for the best. But when you ask yourself what your particular qualms are with people who do that, a lot of it comes back to consent. But the way that we treat animals in general, from like pets to animals that we mass slaughter to consume to eat. I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan, and I'm not really trying to convince you to be. I just think that the article itself raised some interesting moral questions. That being said, I obviously would never endorse having sex with animals and did find reading that extremely upsetting. About a year and a half out from my undergraduate program, I got the opportunity to start studying for my STORYTIMES certification. The biggest certifying body when it comes to being a sexuality professional, so like sex therapists and sex educators alike, is called ASECT, the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. Getting ASECT certified has a lot of steps, from supervision hours to mandatory conferences to class credits. And you can either do each of these steps piecemeal, like on your own, or you can go through a program, which is what I'm doing. I'm about halfway through my certification program.
And period.
One requirement for getting ASECT certified is called a SAR. SAR stands for Sexual Attitudes Reassessment. And the premise of a SAR is basically watching porn for 9 hours a day for 2 days with a group of fellow sexuality professionals who are getting their certification with you. The reason that we do this and the reason that it's required is because, especially if you're in a client-facing position like being a sex therapist, you don't want to be at the point where you have your own practice and then somebody comes in for help, for guidance, and you're not equipped to deal with whatever aspects of their sexuality that they're struggling with, because you don't understand your own biases. So like, for example, if somebody comes in and an aspect of their sexuality is that they love golden showers, and you just hadn't really thought about golden showers before, but now that this person is in front of you, you're realizing that that's not something you want to hear about and it makes you uncomfortable, and you are consciously or subconsciously passing along judgment, you as a professional need to be in the place to be able to tell that person, I'm not the professional for you, and here are, some other resources, other places that might be able to better help you. That's the point of a SAR. So it's basically trying to expose you to as much sexual material as possible so that you understand your own biases. And of course, we all have biases, right? Like, I saw things in that SAR that I probably wouldn't include in this video because I don't want to pass along judgment to people who really enjoy that type of content or those types of activities. That being said, I think that the concept of a SAR, point blank period, would be a lot for the average person. My SAR was a Zoom conference, and in all of the other Zoom conferences in the program, you technically only have to have your camera on 50% of the time, but for your SAR, you're supposed to have your camera on all of the time. And I just think watching that much porn for multiple days in a row, not that it's necessarily damaging my brain or anything, but it was a little bit hard, I think understandably hard to function like a normal person after that. Like, I left my 2-day SAR and I went to my friend's birthday party, and I'm just supposed to be vibing out at the birthday party after I just watched 2 days of porn. I also think another component of the SAR that I think maybe could be considered yucking somebody's yum, but I don't have moral qualms with yucking this type of yum because you should have moral qualms with engaging with this type of content. Part of my SAR was watching AI deepfake porn, like of celebrities, which I'll just say, especially as a woman, feels so wrong. So like, AI is new, and I think that as much as it feels like it's just celebrities being targeted by this type of content, it could be any of us. I've read articles about new AI companies that men can literally, and I'm saying men can literally put out a bounty on anybody, and anyone else on the platform for a price can make AI pornographic content of that person you put a bounty out on. It literally could be any of us. And I've seen like even just TikTokers and people who you wouldn't consider ultra famous be victimized by this type of content, and it's really upsetting. Completely undermines your autonomy. And so being forced to watch that is obviously a bias of mine that I'm low-key proud to have. Not all biases are bad. In my certification program as well, for our sex and culture unit, we read and watched video footage of a community in Colombia where young men essentially practice for their sexual debut by having sex with donkeys in the community, which honestly, I felt like I was maybe prepared to read about, less so prepared to see. I think that's what got to me. And this isn't even like a niche video. This is like a Vice video. It has millions of views. So yeah, wouldn't recommend it for the faint of heart, but it is accessible for you. If that's something you want to see for some reason, I can't imagine why it would be. I mean, I can't imagine why it would be. That is not good. Beyond things I've had to see while studying sex, there are also experiences that I've had while teaching about sex. So I started making sex ed content largely during COVID. Before that, I was mostly just writing. And I had done a few public speaking gigs, but they were all digital events. And as the outside world started to open up, I got booked for my first in-person speaking gig. Somebody from what is essentially a sex club, a play space in New York City hit me up and asked me if I would speak at an event. Which, yes, I was somewhat hesitant to do, but I was assured that this wouldn't be a play party, this wouldn't be a sex party. This was simply a welcome event for people who were considering getting a membership with this play space. So I was going to be talking to people who might be new to the concept of sex positivity, and the theme that I was supposed to speak on was unlearning shame. So when I was on the phone with this person who was trying to book me for a speaking gig, I was telling them about my work and how a lot of my work centers society, oppression, and how those things interfere with our sex lives. And the person who was booking me was like, yeah, that's great, but you probably shouldn't talk about things like that during this event because we just don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. To me, that didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, how am I supposed to talk about shame and stigma without acknowledging where shame and stigma come from? Like, we live in a society. I need to talk about religiosity. I need to talk about misogyny. But against my better judgment, I agreed to speak at this event and kind of was just like, fuck it, I'm gonna say exactly what I want to say. And they booked me and like, that's on you. But if I'm gonna speak, I'm gonna be myself. But when I got to the actual event, I fully understood exactly why they didn't want me to kill the vibe and make people uncomfortable by talking about racism and sexism. Because unlike what I was told, this was essentially a sex party. I walked in and people were starting to have sex. I was just completely misled and like, I don't know what I would have said if the person who booked me was honest with me and I had a better idea of like what I was walking into, like if I would have accepted that speaking gig. And now suddenly here I am interrupting people literally having sex to talk about misogyny. Like, yeah, I did kill the vibe. Everyone hated it, including me. At that point, I really just had to like get in, get out, and like never take a booking at that place again. A bitch got paid though, and period. And finally, as a content creator slash influencer in the sexuality space, a lot of how I make money on a regular basis is with brand deals. Operating in the sexual wellness space, you will see some of the most insane sex products you couldn't even imagine. Some of them I do feel are perhaps unnecessary. Like I was once offered a PR package of a vibrator that had like a vape for weed on the other end of it. I'll put a picture somewhere. That doesn't seem like a product we need. Maybe two different things. I don't think we needed to, but okay. Sure. I once did a brand deal for a company that essentially was selling a Fitbit for your penis. I still have it. It was a cock ring that you wear during sex, and it calculates the number of strokes. I think it's got like your heart rate and stuff like that up in there. This at least makes some sense to me. Like the idea behind a product like this is that you could get a better understanding of your erectile health if you're somebody who is dealing with erectile dysfunction or even premature ejaculation, which so many people with penises do deal with. I just do think the concept of a Fitbit for your penis is hilarious. God, now I'm trying to think of like other just ridiculous products that I've seen. I do worry about things really starting to ramp up in like the AI sex robot space. Like every once in a while, I'll come across content that's just a bit disturbing for me. How many movies do we have between like Ex Machina, the one with Megan Fox. There's a new one coming out where it's like a statement on how the world sees women through a story about a man and his sex robot. That future, I do fear, is very close. And we have learned absolutely nothing from the countless movies that we keep making about it. And here we've got a finished little makeup look. Oh, wait. Thank you so much for watching. Literally let me know what types of videos you want because I am very rapidly running out of ideas. I also love the concept of like a video essay and yapping because I have a lot to yap about. I have a lot of opinions and I never shut the fuck up. So topics, throw them at me. Want them, need that. I will see you in my next one.